Noirs. If you're doing a noir, you have to have a great adjective in your titles. Usually it's big. Usually it's dark. Or usually it's, bright or something. Mm-hmm. So anything has a title like big or dark, it's going to be a noir.
Or Maltese. No.
Right, Maltese. But you always have to have a great adjective for your noir title.
Yep.
Yes.
We have our big. We have our combo.
I don't know what the hell it is.
But yeah, what the hell does that even mean?
I don't know. Right.
I don't know. It kind of makes me want to go out to McDonald's and get a big combo.
We're going to talk about what people regard as a noir classic, and we're going to figure out if it holds up.
Yeah. Join us. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for your continued support of the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Guess what? We are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that website for other film critic members' reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about what is regarded as a noir film classic. That is kind of weird because a lot of my noir friends, we don't really talk about this movie. So let's figure out what the whole hubbub above.
All right, so the big combo. Yeah. Police Lieutenant Leonard Diamond has been directed to stop his investigation of the crime boss known as Mr. Brown. Da-da. An investigation that's yielded no results despite the financial cost. In a last-ditch attempt to take Brown down, Diamond goes after Susan Lowell, Brown's girlfriend, whom he's loved from afar, in search of a mysterious woman named Alicia.
Okay, this stars Cornell Wilde and Gene Wallace. They were actually married when they made this movie. I think they met on the set of this film.
Yeah, I don't know when they officially got. I know that they were together, at least together, while they were during the filming at some point.
Making this movie. Mm-hmm. Previous episode, we talked about This Gun for Hire, which was the kind of the catalyst template of how you make a noir. It wasn't the first, but it was really like how you project a noir. And now we're getting to 55, where we show that's almost getting formulaic. It's almost like, oh yeah, we need to do this, we need to do that. Now I mentioned you're at the end of 1955. What we kind of do see in noir is a stripper way. It's almost basic, but it's a B movie, so it's basic walls, not really anything decorative. You take around all the distractions, almost like an empty room almost, and you just put one camera and one light and go.
Yeah. And I think that's what the big combo kind of has. It's playing by the same rules as a lot of other noir films at the time, at least the ones I've seen.
Yeah. But too much.
But because it's a B movie, because of that, no one at the studio was watching dailies. Nobody was paying attention to the movie, so they were able to do kind of whatever they wanted with it. And that leads to some things like John Alton, who's a very well-known cinematographer.
The austere beer movie director.
This has been considered by some people, as far as I know, to be his best work, because he kind of was just doing he was doing what executives didn't want him to do. But again, this was a B movie, nobody was watching, so he's just doing the kind of lighting he wants, the kind of mood he wants, just making his movie. And so John Alton was the cinematographer on this film. Joseph H. Lewis was our director.
That's when Joseph H. Lewis is the austere B movie director. Mm-hmm. John Alton is the cinematographer. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But yeah, we have, I guess, hitting a lot of the same beats. It's the question of whether or not the movie holds up that I think we're going to probably be going back to a few times here, because there's some things that are pretty fascinating in the movie, things that really took me and excited me.
There's some elements, if you weren't paying attention, you're like, are you getting away with that? Because we will talk about Fonto and Mingo are two guys. You could tell they're boyfriends. They're in a relationship.
That's the thing that confuses the hell out of me. Is I've watched a couple of people who are heavy into noir saying that their relationship is homosexual. TCM, I think, had stated that.
Eddie Moeller and I kind of agree that it's kind of played out that way.
But then there's also people that are like heavy noirs that are like, that's not what this was. That like, quit breathing your today's society into it. And it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle. I think it's kind of like that, but it's kind of
But it's the subtleties, like even when we see Joe Cairo.
Yeah.
And in the book, it says that this guy is flamingly gay. In the book, it says this man is queer.
Yeah.
But in the movies, you couldn't get away with in the 50s, but you want to project it as a way. I mean, he's bawling his eyes out when his buddy's dead.
Yeah.
Usually, if you and I are just hired hitmen, and you die, you're like, oh, well, that's part of the job.
If we've been doing this together for a while.
You understand, like in North by Northwest, you can't even like be on the same bed, and these guys, they're sleeping together.
Yes.
Not to mention Lee Van Cleef, one of his first roles, is projected. So it's a lot of what we show in gayness in movies was so subtle you could just to get away with it.
Well, and that's what I thought was frustrating was I've seen the argument made that because they didn't exist within certain parameters of how we defined homosexuality in the 50s in movies, that there was this idea that if you wanted to portray someone who was gay in your noir film, you had to talk about their predilection for shopping or their enjoyment of fashion. Or things like that if you wanted to say that this character was gay but not really say it. And it's like, so what's the difference between saying that these two people were at least in love? And I think that's maybe the difference that we're being made here is they may not have been lovers, but they may have loved each other to that point.
Yeah.
You know, much like, what am I saying, the character from North by Northwest.
Martin Landau was doing a gay character.
Was playing a gay character, but he was playing a person as though he's in love with his boss. Like he does love his boss. It may not have been a sexual love, maybe, but it was a emotional love, and that's not a problem. It's kind of like how how people have portrayed it now.
As we talked about how queerness saved film. You cited this movie. A lot of other people who cited that. I don't see that. And that's the way. You had to do it subtle to get away with it. Or you're just going to be flat out cut on the floor.
Well, and speaking of subtlety saved one of the most controversial moments in this movie,
yes,
which was our oral sex scene, if you will.
Gene Wallace, why you stay with this man? And then he goes off camera, and then you realize this is why she stays with him.
Yes. Right. So this was 5 years prior to the flushing toilet of Psycho.
Yeah.
5 years prior to
but Mr. Brown coming behind the girlfriend, you know why you stay with me, and she's like, don't even start.
Yep. And then she's like, don't
and
stop.
And then he just drops down camera. Yeah.
And the best part
how they got away with how censors got away.
I read into how this argument took place, how he saved this scene in the movie, and I can't recall if it was Alton or Lewis who was kind of involved with this kind of discussion, but when the censors came through and said this scene's got to go, he said, what's wrong with the scene?
Yeah, where did he go?
He's like, yeah, and he goes, well, where do you think he went? And he was like, well, off screen. Like they were like, you can't tell me that this is about oral sex. Yeah. You can't prove that this scene is about oral sex. It's about a man kissing his woman.
Just like in This Gun for Hire, when the door is shut and he shoots the door.
Exactly.
You don't see that.
We're skirting around the problems, and I think that's what's always one of my favorite things in any cinema that is broken by too many rules is watching people skirt it.
Which is, when you work movies, B movies, you want to see how far you can get with stuff.
Oh yeah, you want to.
So you want to let's see if these guys gay and get away with it. And that's the aesthetic of being a director, being an artist. You want to see where the boundaries are, where you can get what you can get away with and what not.
But the same thing with having two gay characters here or Martin Landau's in North by Northwest is, again, you can always say, prove to me that these characters are gay. Yeah. You can't. And honestly, as a viewer, you can believe that they're not. It doesn't change the movie at all.
No.
It's just enough to push you in the direction, and as a person trying to stop my movie from being made, you can't tell me that that's happening.
So this is the start of Lee Van Cleef in films. We know he was in Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, so he's peppered into movies, not really carrying him. And by the 70s, he's carrying movies, he's doing westerns, and then he was in Escape from New York. Yeah. This is Cornel Wilde and Gene Willis. Richard Conte.
Yes.
He's always played the wonderful bad guy in noirs. He's always got the best lines.
I heard he played a couple of good guys prior to this film, and that it kind of flipped him a little bit, but I didn't find any of those films. I haven't seen enough noir to actually fight you on that, but I think he played a couple of good guys, and that's why they were happy to have him, because Jack Palance was brought in to play Mr. Brown first. But he fought with producers, and apparently he wanted his wife to play Gene Wallace's character. And when they refused,
Jack would have been great.
He left. And he's one of those guys. He's kind of like a Marlon Brando, where it's like, I can see why you don't want to work with him, because he's not fun to work with. But he turns out some really great.
He burned a lot of bridges in Hollywood to the point where he had a host Ripley, believe it or not. And then when he got older, kind of got soft enough where he can play Batman in 1989.
1989, I got some city slickers down his belt.
Brian Donlevy?
Donlevy, I think.
Donlevy. Brian Donlevy. He looks like this he has the aesthetic look in this movie like he could take over everybody. But then he plays it soft where he can be bullied.
Yep.
But he always looks like he's the man in charge. But then you pick on him enough, then he backs down. Mm-hmm. And he always plays this villain of this guy that's always the bad guy, but he gets bullied.
Yep.
where it's like, are they gone? What the heck? Yeah.
Well, I like his character Joe McClure because he is a guy who could easily take over this business. I feel like he could stage a coup and take over.
After
but the
watching
thing is, he respects his boss enough to the point where even when he's been kind of put in a position where now he's going to die for what he's done, he's still like, he understands it. He knew his place. And he took it, and it's a very fascinating character. It's a character I hope I never would have been.
I think it's the most fascinating character in the movie because he has the opportunity to say, enough of this, and start pulling out guns and taking over.
Yeah.
But his character, he's just so wimpy. He's so...
Yeah, it's almost like his dedication to the position, he's in. And I think he's got one of the most intense noir death scenes I've seen in
when he
my limited
when he thinks he has the upper hand.
And he goes like, I'm not going to let you hear any gunshots, okay? And he pulls out the earpiece. That is an absolutely... Like, I knew it was coming, and it's a great death scene.
That's where you make it a noir.
Yep.
All the other stuff of the gumshoe dialogue, the rugged dialogue, I'm going to get you, Mr. Brown, She's not going to die in a public, what's a crime? She's never hurt anybody. She's trying to hurt herself.
Well, remember we talked about how we recently talked about the 13th Floor, and we said like that's a terrible title for a movie. And this is another movie, I think, terrible title for the movie, just because it hits like it's almost like a random title generator.
What the hell is the big combo in this?
But not only that, I think it might have some of my least favorite character names in any noir film we've talked about. I think Leonard Diamond sounds like it went through a noir randomizer where we just took like what you would say a first and last name and like bumped out like Leonard Diamond.
They went to Cornell. Why don't you just use Cornell Wilde?
Yeah. Or like Mr. Brown comes out as like, Mr. We won't actually give you his first name. Brown. Okay. Like they sound cliche.
I know, because when they use just last names in Reservoir Dogs, it's effective.
Yeah, Mr. Brown and that, it's fantastic.
Fantastic, right. Or you use it in Kansas City Confidential, where it's his alias, and you have to respect it. There's a short film called, there's an Orson Welles did a film called Mr. Wu.
Yeah.
And we always talk about Mr. Wu, and then you see Mr. Wu, and you're like, oh, gosh. But Mr. Brown just sounds like you just kicked it out of the generic cycle wheel and, pull it out of a hat, and that's the name. Because there's nothing you can retain out of it. It's almost like an alias.
Yep.
Yeah. And they say their names all the time in this movie.
That's the thing, too, is because the names don't work, every time you hear them, it's a little grating. That's where my flaws come out with the film is that...
your name, I'm Detective Diamond, and I was like, well, how expensive are you?
Yeah. It's a movie that I don't think the central mystery works altogether.
It's convoluted.
Because the thing is, we know our goal going into the movie. We need to figure out who Alicia is. But then we get caught up with this, like, I'm in love with the girlfriend, and I think, like, the whole, like, my relationship with my boss is kind of confusing, and I've been trying to hunt down Mr. Brown, and I haven't had a chance. But it's
We're talking about Leonard Diamond's character, yeah.
There's so many things
and then I have a girlfriend on the side that when
and there's stuff that I really like about that, like the elements that change, like he has a non-married sexual relationship with a woman, which is kind of wild. Yeah. And again, the fact that she's taken out in a very this gun for hire style of we didn't show her dying, we just showed her dead. Yeah.
But it's a great noir. I like the aesthetic, the scene in the alley where she walks by him and she's like, oh, it's you. Did the other girlfriend turn you down? Now you're here. It's a very noir of...
Yes.
They're tortured, they're wretched characters.
Yeah, so I think there's elements of this film that feel a little bit too by the books.
Yes.
And there's elements of it that feel like they're branching out. And that's why it's kind of a frustrating watch, because I was entertained by the movie. But there are elements of it where I'm like, I can see this better in this movie. I can see this better in that movie. But then there's things you can only get in the big comedy.
And that's what happens when you've been doing noirs for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. It gets too generic. I understand what you have to do. The rules. You have to obey by the formulaic rules, the lighting, the setting, the dialogue. It's always got to be this harsh, hard-boiled detective. It's got a woman on the side. The murder mysteries gets convoluted, the dialogue and everything. And we've seen it before, and you're trying to find something new that you can interject, and the new just seems like you just want to break the rules.
Yes.
And it doesn't want to break out too far because you're a B-movie. And that's why I think it's lost. The tile's generic. Mm-hmm. It's a generic noir. I think you've seen some other refreshness that has happened, and it's just because they age. It's 1955. We've done hundreds of these.
We're talking here about 15 years after the genesis, after the real genesis of what we consider the classic films in the genre. It's not that different from 15 years past the genesis of what I consider to be the horror film, which would be our Dracula and Frankenstein of the Universal films. 31 was when they both dropped. By the mid-40s, we were grasping at some straws with those things, and it was really until we decided to mash them together and make, like, or have the 50s where like Hammer reinvigorated the kind of genre again. They go through these ebbs and flows, and horror and noir have a lot in common because they are two genres that both made their living on B-sides. You know, being the second film in a two-picture was where you try all the weird stuff you wanted to do. Big Combo was able to try things that other films couldn't do because it was on the B picture and no one was watching it. The same thing is true of horror in that time.
Yes, and so like we talk about Halloween, kind of like starting slasher films. And then from 78?
Yeah,
and
add 15 years to that.
In 1989, you got Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, which is like the end.
Well, not
well, you did all
you even go back past that to like Freddy's Dead, where you're like, oh yeah, we've gotten stale. Okay, yeah. And then like Jason Goes to Hell during I think 93, where it's like, oh, so now we're trying new things to keep it alive,
refresh,
you know. And it's like we had hit that point again where we were waiting for a scream. You know, we were waiting for something to be like, don't worry, we're still alive.
Right, and this is the analogy I talk about. This Gun for Hire is kind of like the catalyst for noirs, and then here we have
a struggling
Jason Go to Hell. Right?
Yeah,
the big combo. Like
we have a struggling ideas where like some of them really work and some of them don't. That's kind of how Jason Goes to Hell is too. Some of the ideas work and some don't.
Try to break censors, trying to find something refreshing to do. The jazz music, you know.
Well, I want to talk about the jazz music because jazz music is considered to be the main theme of all noir, and it's really not as much as you think. I did some looking into this. Jazz music very rare in noir.
Yes.
And yet we associate it with noir on the outset. And I think part of that is because like really good scores. I like the score of this movie. It was David Raskin who did Laura, the Man with the Cloak. And I really like the score that's here. It's one of the best that I've seen.
I think it saves the movie. I really do.
It is a saving grace because it kind of like it reminds you what movie you're in. It kind of like carries you back in. And then just some of the writing choices and style. There were reveals I did not see coming. There was things I was excited about, like just that I wouldn't have expected from a film in 1955 to do. Not so much for a film in noir, but a film in 1955.
And I think the first act is wonderful. I like the first act, but then you're untangling the murder mystery. You get it kind of, come on. Yeah,
it's a rough act too.
Yeah,
because I think it's a movie
that's hard. You get a rough act too.
Really struggling to find what its plot line is.
Yeah, and that's tough. And if you didn't know, the unofficial sport of noir is boxing. So I think they're trying to the big combo, like something with boxing related. And the unofficial sport for noir is boxing. And you start with the movie with boxing, and then he's a boxing manager and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a really like there's clever items at play here. I think, we can see a lot of where the genre could branch out, where we could try new things with it that are there, you know? It's just not always skirting around it, you know? Yep. But Act 2 is rough. I think Act 3 is my favorite portion. I think the death scene with the hearing aid, I think, I like the ending where she's got the spotlight and she's trying to direct where he is.
Very much like Batman 65. You're like, oh, there they are.
Yeah, some of these you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Yes.
And then the iconic closing shot of the film, which is very Casablanca-esque,
right?
Of like standing in the fog and everything like that. There's just things that work really well, muddled with things that we've seen so many times.
Right, and that's the fall. It's just
it's a big combo of those two.
Yeah, and it's the timing. We've seen it all.
Yeah,
it's just recycled almost, where you know the formula, what you have to do, and when you get trapped into a formula, you're going to try to take some risks. Maybe we could break some sensors, try something daring, but then subtle. But right, I think it just gets lost. And like I said, it's a classic. I don't know what I've talked to a lot of noir films, and it's never going to be on my list of favorite noirs. But I don't know if it's just a selling point of it's so formulaic. We've seen it has some of the other things we retained. We remember what noirs are supposed to be.
I think there's enough new in this to make it worthwhile. And I think if you're not a noir fan, I don't think this is a movie you need to hunt down as far as a history lesson. If you are getting into the genre, though, I think this is a good one to see for its historical context, for what it meant for the genre itself.
Yes.
And I also like to think as this film is maybe a prequel to side story to what happened with Richard Conte as he moved on through The Godfather.
Well,
I think to see him move into that.
Richard Conte in The Godfather, like he playing a bad guy.
Yep.
I'm the ultimate bad guy. Yeah.
Yep.
But I think if you like to see a cop obsessed with getting the bad guy and the bad guy obsessed just being bad, it's almost like Heat.
Yeah. Well, and as I was watching, he reminded me of Jack Nicholson's character in The Pledge, where he has been involved in this mystery so
I like
much
that. I forget.
Can't get out. He can't avoid it. He's going to have to figure it out, even if he's not getting help from his boss, not getting the funding to do the job anymore. I thought that was really funny. I was watching an interview with Frank Miller where he said that
Frank Miller, comic book artist.
Yeah, Raymond Chandler described our heroes in noirs as a knight in dirty armor, and that Frank Miller referred to it as a knight in bloody armor. And that was kind of the twinge of these two guys, and that's kind of how I see Leonard, is that he's kind of like getting himself in too deep past the point of no return, where he's going to actually become a criminal searching to stop a criminal if he doesn't get careful. And I think there's enough good in there.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So, have you seen the big combo?
Yeah, let us know down below. The film is currently streaming on a couple of different services. If you have a library card, you may be able to watch it for free with Canopy, which is a streaming service that you can use your library card.
I always forget that's an option.
Oh, it is, and it's fantastic. Yeah. This was one that I actually picked, so big news for Kyle. I picked Noir for Nick. Yeah. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on the film.
Does that mean I got to pick a horror movie for you?
You've picked plenty. I'm just kidding. No, definitely. Yeah, that's what I like about our two sensibilities is we have noir and we have horror, and we just kind of force feed stuff to each other. So,
they come together.
But yeah, let us know your thoughts on the film down below and where you think it sits in the pantheon of film noir. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe to the video. They're two things that you can do. Don't cost you any money at all, but they're supporting the channel, making sure you don't miss new episodes. Because we got new episodes Mondays, Thursdays, and Scary Movie Saturdays. We also have exclusive content on the Patreon. You can find our picks.
Join that before we do Alfred Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, this month we're doing Alfred Hitchcock. We're doing our top 5 Alfred Hitchcock movies. Before this month, had watched 4 Alfred Hitchcock movies, so I am heavily watching these movies right now to put my list together. You can also check out our top 10 that we did on 1997 movies, as well as our preview episode on David Cronenberg picks. So we've got lots of good content available on the Patreon. You can join for as low as $1. If you join at $5 and up, then you can help pick the movies we talk about on the show.
Yeah.
So if you've got another big combo,
there's enough movies out there with big in the title. Yeah,
we should rank our big movies. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. You can find my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
And you can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, a podcast where I interview local filmmakers from the Twin Cities area. And if we did movies with the title big in it, we're not going to do big business.
We're going to do big
business. No!